They say the world is full of stories that never get told. Whispers in the dark, secrets buried beneath old floors, shadows that pass behind closed doors when no one should be home. But some stories, they refuse to stay hidden. I didn't grow up in a place where people cared much about dreams or stories. In our quiet, crumbling barrio tucked between a mountain and the sea, people only cared about surviving another day. My name is Eliezer. Most people just called me Eli. I came from nothing, born to a mother who passed before I could walk, raised by a drunk uncle who saw me more as an extra mouth than a child. Our house was little more than a leaning wooden shack with a rusted roof and holes in the floor. But I knew every creak, every whisper it made when the wind passed through it. I was always different. I felt things that others didn't, heard sounds no one else noticed. But I never dared speak of them, not in a place like ours, where stories like mine were labeled as either lies or madness. My only real friend was Mateo. He lived 2 houses down. His family had a tiny sari-sari store. He was one of the few people who never looked at me like I was cursed. He had this loud laugh that filled even the darkest days with a little bit of light. When I felt like disappearing, Mateo would show up with a boiled egg, or a cheap comic book, or sometimes just his company. But everything started to change the year I turned 17. It began with the dreams. At first, I thought they were just that, dreams. In one of them, I stood in a field of dead trees, all twisted like hands reaching to the sky. There were voices, hundreds of them, whisper my name. But when I woke up, my palms were covered in dirt. Real dirt. My fingernails were black, like I'd been digging. I told myself I must have sleepwalked. It happens, right? But then came the birds. One morning, I stepped outside and found dozens of dead crows scattered around our yard, like they had fallen from the sky mid-flight. Their eyes were still open. All of them were facing my window. The neighbors said it was a bad omen, but they didn't look surprised. In our place, people believed in old things, things they didn't dare name. Then I started seeing her. A girl, maybe 15, 16. Pale skin, black hair down her waist. She wore a long white dress, old-fashioned like something from a funeral decades ago. She never spoke, never blinked, just stared from the edge of the forest, just past the rice fields where no one dared to go after dark. At first, I thought it was just my mind, but then Mateo saw her too. We were walking back from the store late one afternoon. The sun was setting, casting long orange shadows. We were laughing about something, one of those stupid stories from school. Then suddenly he stopped. His face changed. Eli, look. And there she was, standing still among the trees. But the moment we looked back, she was gone. That night, I couldn't sleep. The air felt heavy, like something was pressing down on my chest. And then I heard it, a soft tapping on the window. Talp, talp, talp. I wanted to look, but my body refused to move. I lay frozen, praying, sweating, trying to breathe quietly. By morning, I thought I'd imagined it, until I saw the muddy handprints on the glass, small like a child's, but with long, thin fingers too long. After that, strange things became part of my life. Mateo tried to joke about it, said maybe I was haunted by a lovesick ghost, but his smile never reached his eyes anymore. We tried to forget. We'd still go out to the river, skip stones, eat mango with salt, talk about escaping the barrio someday. But even in those light moments, I could feel it, like something watching, waiting, a shadow just out of sight. One afternoon, we went to the old abandoned school near the edge of the town. It had been closed for years after a fire. Rumors said it was cursed. We dared each other to go inside, just for laughs. Mateo went first, laughing nervously. I followed, though my chest felt tight the moment we stepped inside. The walls were black with soot, the air thick with the smell of mold and ash. Everything was silent, too silent. We only stayed a few minutes, but before we left, I noticed something carved into the wall in thin, jagged letters. A name, Eliezer. I didn't remember carving it. Mateo swore he hadn't. We ran out of there without looking back. That night, I dreamed again. This time, I was standing in front of a mirror. But the reflection wasn't mine. It was her, the girl in white. She looked at me with hollow eyes and whispered one word, "Come." I woke up on the floor, far from my bed, and in my hand was a small black feather. I didn't know what was happening to me. I felt like I was losing my grip on what was real. But somewhere deep inside, I also felt something else, like a door had opened. A door to something ancient. Forgotten. Then came the letter. It was slipped under our front door. No name. No return address. Just old yellowed paper and smudged handwriting that read, "You are not who you think you are. She is calling you home. Go to the tree with the broken branches before the next full moon, or they will come for you." I showed it to Mateo. He laughed it off, said it was probably just some prank. But I could tell he was scared. I was too, more than I'd ever been. The next day, the girl appeared again. Closer this time. Not at the forest's edge, but near the well in front of our house. Just standing, staring. And then she smiled. Not kindly, not sadly. It was the kind of smile that makes your blood turn cold. That night, I heard whispers under my bed. I didn't dare move. And the next morning, Mateo was gone. Vanished. No one had seen him. His house was open. His things untouched. But he was just gone. And in front of his doorstep, someone had drawn a symbol. A circle with strange markings. Inside it, a single black feather. I stood there, heart pounding, knowing deep in my bones that this was only the beginning. That something had woken up, and it wanted me. And somehow, I had already been chosen. I didn't sleep that night. Mateo was gone, and no one seemed to care. His mother wept. Yes, but the neighbors, the barangay officials, even the police, they just shrugged. Baka Tamak Bolang, they said, maybe he ran away. But I knew my best friend better than that. He wouldn't leave without a word, especially not without telling me. But deep inside, a voice whispered something I didn't want to believe. They took him. I stared at the black feather they left behind, still resting in the middle of that strange circle. I didn't dare touch it. I felt like if I did, something would follow me home. That evening, the air was strange. Heavy. The type of stillness that warned fishermen not to sail or children not to play under old trees. The wind carried a scent I couldn't place. Wet earth, burned leaves, and something rotting. I stayed inside, locked every window, but the house didn't feel safe anymore. It creaked louder. The shadows seemed to stretch longer than they should. That night, my uncle came home drunk again, but something about him felt off. He didn't yell like he usually did. Didn't even look at me. Just went straight to his room, muttering something under his breath. But I heard it. Just one word, a swang. My blood ran cold. He knew. The next morning, I found an old box in the back of our kitchen shelf. I didn't remember seeing it before. Inside were faded photos, my mother, barely older than I was now, smiling. Next to her was a man I didn't recognize. His face scratched out. Underneath the pictures, wrapped in old fabric, was a small wooden pendant. It was carved into the shape of a kabibi shell, and in the center was a tiny, glowing stone, pale green, almost alive. As soon as I touched it, something shifted. The wind outside howled. My vision blurred, and suddenly I wasn't in the kitchen anymore. I stood in the middle of a foggy clearing, tall trees surrounding me. I could hear whispers again, but not just any whispers. They were calling my name, and in front of me stood a man. Old, bent, dressed in worn clothes. He had eyes that looked through time. "You are not cursed," he said, "but you are chosen." Then I blinked. I was back in the kitchen, sweating, heart racing. The pendant was still in my hand. Warm now, like it knew I had seen something I wasn't supposed to. That same day, I went to the river. I didn't know why. Maybe I hoped to find answers. Maybe I just needed to breathe. That's when I met him. He looked like a man, but not quite. His skin had a bluish tint. His eyes were far too round. His feet didn't touch the ground fully, almost like he floated. He sat near the edge of the water, humming an old lullaby I had only ever heard in dreams. "You've seen her, haven't you?" he said without turning. "The girl in white." I didn't answer. I just stared. She walks between the living and the dead. She's not the threat. She's the warning. I wanted to run, but my body wouldn't move. "You were the Mutia, don't you?" He finally turned to me. His eyes glowed faintly. "That stone belonged to your mother, and her mother before her." "What are you?" I finally managed to ask. "A friend," he said. "Some call me Shokoi, some call me Monster. But to your mother, I was a protector." He stood and walked toward me, silent as mist. "Eli, your blood is not ordinary. You carry a gift and a curse. Your mother tried to hide it. She left our world to raise you among humans. But now the veil has broken. The Aswangs have awakened, and they want you back." I swallowed hard. "Back? I don't belong to them." The Shokoi tilted his head. "Not yet, but you are of two worlds, and both sides want you." He reached into the river and pulled out a strange staff, half coral, half wood, etched with ancient marks. "You must choose, run or fight. But if you run, more will vanish. Like Mateo, like your mother." My hands clenched. "You said she hid from them," I whispered. "But what happened to her?" He looked down. "Your mother died protecting you from the curse. She sealed it with her life, but only for a time. You were meant to awaken at 17. They knew. They've waited." He pressed the staff into the mud. "The girl in white. She's a soul trapped between this world and the next. She watches over the veil, and when she smiles, it means they're coming." I felt the mutia glow against my chest. "What am I supposed to do?" He gave me a small pouch filled with crushed herbs, shells, and dried leaves. "Find the albulario. He lives beyond the mountain path. He will teach you. But beware. Not all who look human are still human." That night, I left the house. I didn't tell my uncle. I didn't say goodbye. The mountain path was steep and overgrown, but the mutia pulsed like a heartbeat, guiding me. I walked until the sun rose, and finally, I found the hut, hidden beneath thick vines and moss. The albulario was already waiting, as if he'd known I would come. He was blind in one eye, his hands covered in symbols I couldn't read. He didn't ask my name. He simply said, "She told me you'd arrive." The girl, with a broken smile. Training began immediately, not with swords or spells, but with rituals, protection circles, prayers to the old gods, roots and herbs to ward off spirits. He taught me to listen, to the wind, to the insects, to the silence. "You are hunted," he said, "but you are not helpless." Days passed, or maybe weeks. Time felt different there. The forest whispered at night. Sometimes I'd see eyes watching from the trees. Sometimes I'd hear Mateo's voice calling from the darkness. The albulario warned me, "They'll use your pain, your memories. They'll twist them." One night, during a cleansing ritual, I collapsed. My body convulsed. I saw a vision, Mateo, bound in vines, suspended over a pit of fire. Around him danced creatures with hollow eyes and long tongues. They chanted my name. When I awoke, the albulario was burning incense. He looked shaken. "They're speeding up. The Aswangs know you're learning. They're getting desperate." That evening, he gave me a weapon, an old dagger made from bolete wooden bone, carved with sun and moon symbols. "This belonged to your grandfather. He fought them too, before they tore him apart." I felt the weight of the weapon, not just in my hand, but in my blood. My family had always run from the truth. But now, I would face it, and somewhere out there, Mateo was still waiting. But I could feel it. We were running out of time. I didn't sleep much anymore. Even in the safety of the albulario's hut, my dreams turned darker. Visions of fire, screams, shadows dragging people into the earth. And always, always that smile. The girl in white, her mouth twisting into something not meant for human faces. It followed me even when I was awake. I would feel her eyes on me, sometimes in the trees, sometimes reflected in water. But those weren't the worst things. What haunted me most was my mother's face. Not the one in the photo, smiling and kind, but the one I saw in the visions, the one who had lied. The albulario sat me down one night beside the fire. "You need to know," he said, voice low, almost unsure. "Your mother didn't just die protecting you. She made a choice, one that cost lives." I felt my stomach tighten. "What do you mean?" "She was part of them once. Not in a swing, not completely. But she carried the blood. She made a pact to leave it behind. She hid you from both sides. She thought love would be enough to protect you." My throat dried up. "You're lying." "I wish I was." He handed me a piece of burned parchment. It had my mother's name on it, written in blood, sealed with the mark I had seen carved into Mateo's doorstep. The same mark drawn near my window. I stared at it, my hands shaking. "She was marked," he said, "which means you were too." I left the hut that night without a word. I needed air. I needed space. I needed to stop feeling like I was losing everything I had ever believed. I wandered the trail near the river, where fog clung to the ground like ghosts. Every sound, leaves crunching, insects chirping, frogs croaking, felt louder. I sat near the edge, watching the water flow like nothing in the world had changed. But I had, and I hated it. Why didn't she tell me? Why did she lie? Was Mateo taken because of me? Will more people suffer because of me? A low growl snapped me out of my thoughts. At first, I thought it was just a dog. But when I turned, I saw eyes, glowing red, peeking from behind the bushes. Then more eyes. 3, 4, 6 pairs. They crept forward slowly. Shadows with hunched backs, their mouths stretched too wide, teeth sharp and yellow. Not quite human, not quite animal. The albulario had warned me of these, to Gabulag, servants of the Aswang who could hide from sight unless you bore the mutia. I stood, heart pounding, hand gripping the dagger made from bolete wood. They snarled but didn't attack. One of them stepped forward and spoke in a voice that was both male and female, echoing like two people trapped in one body. "You're not ready yet," it hissed. "But soon. They want you alive." I didn't reply. I held my ground. Another one crouched low. He's starting to remember. His blood is waking. Suddenly, they all vanished into the trees, like smoke fading into night. I ran back to the hut, breath ragged, heart racing. The albulario was waiting. He said nothing at first, just handed me a bowl of warm tea. "You saw them." I nodded. "They'll come closer now. They know you're aware." I sat in silence for a long time, staring into the fire. Then I asked the question I had been avoiding. If my mother made a pact, was my uncle part of it? The albulario didn't look at me. "He was the one who brought you back here when she died. That wasn't an accident. He was supposed to raise you in secret. But I fear he broke his promise." Everything fell into place. The way he avoided my eyes, the muttering, the way he acted after Mateo vanished. And that word, a swang. He knew. He'd always known. I felt sick. The man who raised me had lied every day of my life. While I begged for food, while I cried at night, missing a mother I never really knew, he carried this secret. Why? To protect me? Or to protect himself? I wanted to scream. But instead, I asked, what happens if I walk away? If I leave and never fight? The albulario stared into the flames. Then they win. And this land, your home, will turn to ash. They've waited generations for this. The prophecy spoke of a child born from both light and shadow. A bridge. A weapon. You are that child. I dropped my head into my hands. I didn't ask for any of this. I didn't want to be a weapon. I wanted my friend back. I wanted a mother who never had to hide. I wanted to wake up and be normal. But normal was a lie, too. The next few days were hard. Training intensified. The albulario taught me how to draw sigils in dirt, how to use the mutia to sense lies, how to bind spirits using strands of hair and salt. My body ached. My mind kept drifting. My heart was heavy. One night, as I prepared for sleep, I saw smoke rising in the distance, near our barrio. I ran. Branches whipped my face. My feet slipped on wet leaves. But I didn't stop. I reached the edge of town just as the fire died down. It wasn't a house that burned. It was my uncle's shack. The roof had caved in. Blackened wood and ash covered the yard. Neighbors stood watching, silent, their faces pale. I pushed through the crowd. And there, in the center of it all, untouched by fire, was the symbol again. A perfect circle. Inside it, the charred bones of my uncle. Beside him, a small glass jar. I picked it up with shaking hands. Inside was a preserved piece of skin, tattooed with the same seal as the parchment. The albulario arrived minutes later. He looked at the jar, then at me. He was trying to delay it, but they got to him first. I wanted to hate my uncle. I wanted to scream at his memory, curse him for the lies. But all I felt was emptiness. He wasn't a good man. But maybe he loved me in his own broken way. Or maybe he was just too afraid. That night, I stood in the ashes of my old home, the mutia glowing against my chest, and made a promise. No more running. No more lies. Whatever I was, whatever I had to become, I would face it, even if it broke me, because the war had already begun, and I was no longer a boy in hiding. I was the flame they feared, and the darkness was coming. Subscribe to uncover more of the 42 untold real horror stories. The air grew heavier each day. Even the birds stopped singing near the woods. People in the barrio whispered more now, always looking over their shoulders, locking their windows before sundown. Dogs barked at nothing. Chickens stopped laying eggs. Trees near the river started to wither, their leaves falling even though it wasn't the season. The signs were clear. They were coming. I felt it too. Every time I touched the mutia hanging around my neck, a strange heat pulsed from it, like it was waking up along with the darkness it was meant to fight. The albulario said the Aswang queen had started her summoning. He said they were preparing for a ritual that would open a gate between their world and ours. If that happened, the curse would spread, not just to our barrio, but to every town and city nearby. Children would vanish. People would turn against each other. Shadows would move without light. I tried to stay strong. I trained harder, memorized every sigil, repeated every chant, sharpened the Belit dagger until my hands bled. But deep inside, I still felt it, that small, cruel voice. What if I'm not enough? What if I lose again? What if Mateo is already dead? Those thoughts weighed me down more than any enemy could. One morning, as fog curled across the fields, I returned to the albulario's hut. He wasn't alone. A girl sat beside him, her eyes red from crying. It took me a moment, but I recognized her. I say, Mateo's younger sister. She stood as soon as she saw me. You have to help me, she said. I saw him. Last night. In the woods. My heart jumped. What do you mean? She wiped her eyes. He was standing under the Belit tree. But something was wrong. His mouth moved like he was speaking, but no sound came out. His skin looked pale, like he hadn't seen sunlight in weeks. The albulario stood up. It was a projection, a warning. They're showing you what they've done. It means they know she's close to you. I looked at Isay, then back at the albulario. Can they use her against us? They already are. From that moment, I knew she couldn't stay behind. She refused to hide, even when I begged her. He's my brother, she said, voice shaking. I'd rather die looking for him than live pretending he's already gone. And so, she joined us. We weren't warriors. Not really. Just broken people trying to hold something together. Memories, promises, hope. But maybe that was enough. Each night we walked deeper into the forest, searching for signs. The trees whispered in a language we couldn't understand. Sometimes we saw markings carved into trunks, symbols from old dialects no one had spoken in centuries. We found feathers soaked in blood, circles of stones that made our skin crawl, and once a torn piece of clothing we knew belonged to Mateo. One night, as the moon turned red, the albulario told us the truth. This forest was once the heart of the Dawada's domain, he said, but long ago it was stolen. The Aswangs performed a ritual to trap the guardian spirit in stone. They buried her deep in a cave north of here. That act cursed the land. That's why nothing grows right. That's why the air feels sick. If we free the spirit, I asked, will it weaken them? He nodded. It will buy us time. And maybe, just maybe she will fight with you. The journey to the cave took days. We avoided villages, moved only at night, and never lit fires. The enemy was everywhere now. Animals were vanishing. People we passed stared too long with glassy eyes. Some never blinked. On the third night, we were attacked. Not by creatures, but by Tau. Men and women from a nearby barrio, their skin covered in strange symbols, their eyes clouded white. They moved like puppets, silent, fast, unfeeling. I fought with the dagger, I say with a torch, and the albulario chanted prayers to push them back. We didn't kill them, just drove them away long enough to escape. Later, the albulario said they were sleepwalkers, souls stolen from their bodies but still alive. They serve without knowing, he said, and when the queen finishes her ritual, they'll be the first to fall completely. Each step toward the cave felt like walking into a storm. The forest grew darker. Wind blew from nowhere. Our dreams became twisted. I dreamt of drowning in black water, of my mother whispering my name from beneath the earth, of Mateo screaming while shadows crawled into his mouth. But still, we pushed forward. One evening, we found the mouth of the cave. It wasn't hidden. In fact, it looked like it had been waiting for us. Vines pulled away as we approached. The entrance glowed faintly, like something inside was breathing. We prepared for the descent. The albulario gave me a vial of enchanted oil, something he said could light even the darkest corners. I say carried salt wrapped in banana leaves, protection against spirits. I carried the dagger, the mutia, and a heart full of questions. Before we stepped in, the albulario turned to me. You're close, he said, but after this, there's no turning back. The final days are near, and he pointed to the cave, has been watching you longer than you think. I didn't understand what he meant. Not until we were inside. The cave was alive. Walls pulsed like veins. The air was warm and wet. Strange whispers echoed from every direction. Light from the vial showed ancient carvings of battles, betrayals, a great queen crowned with fire. And then we found her. She wasn't a statue. She was a spirit trapped inside stone, her body part rock, part smoke, eyes closed, arms reaching out like she'd been begging for someone, anyone, to save her for centuries. When I stepped closer, the mutia glowed so bright I couldn't look straight at it. And then her eyes opened. A single word echoed in my head. Remember. Memories that weren't mine flooded in. A temple burning. A queen crying as her sisters were slaughtered. A child born from both bloodlines. Hidden, protected, feared. I saw my mother again, but not as I remembered. She wasn't crying. She was fighting. She stood between the queen and a dark army, her hands glowing, her face strong. Then I saw myself, as a baby, placed in a basket of woven gold and sent down a river. I stumbled back. The mutia pulsed wildly. What did you see? I asked. I opened my mouth to speak, but then the cave shook. Roars erupted from outside. The earth cracked. The air turned cold. The enemy had found us. And this time, they weren't sending shadows. They were coming themselves. The final battle was near. and I wasn't ready. Subscribe to follow the next chapter of 42 Untold Real Horror Stories. The earth trembled beneath our feet as the roars outside grew louder, deep, guttural sounds that didn't belong to any animal we knew. The cave walls pulsed like a heartbeat, the ancient carvings glowing faintly. The spirit queen inside the stone closed her eyes again, as if bracing for something terrible. We didn't know whether to run or fight, but it was too late for choices. The shadows came first. Dark figures slithered through the cave entrance. Long arms, glowing eyes, no faces. They didn't walk. They floated just above the ground, their bodies twisting like smoke. I gripped the Belit dagger tightly, my hands shaking. Isay stood close behind me, her torch flickering wildly in the wind that shouldn't have been there. The albulario began chanting, his voice stronger than ever before. Strange symbols lit up along the walls, as if responding to his words. But the shadows didn't stop. They pushed forward, dozens of them now. Then, something strange happened. The mutia around my neck glowed again, brighter than ever before, and for a brief second, everything froze. The shadows paused midair. The wind stopped. Even the roar from outside vanished. And I saw her again, the queen's spirit, not as a statue, but in her true form, a tall, radiant woman dressed in leaves and smoke, her eyes glowing like stars. She looked at me, her face filled with sorrow. "You are not just a fighter," she whispered in my mind. "You are the key. You are the reason the curse began, and the only one who can end it." Then the moment ended. The shadows lunged. We fought. Daggers flashed. Spells collided with dark mist. I moved faster than I ever had, guided by instinct I didn't understand. The albulario held the rear, protecting the queen's prison with sacred chants. Isay burned two of the shadows with her torch, screaming Mateo's name as if it gave her strength. But it wasn't enough. One of the shadows slipped past me and rushed toward the albulario. Before I could stop it, the creature slashed across his chest with claws made of bone. He fell back, blood soaking his shirt. "No!" I yelled. Isay ran to him, pressing cloth against the wound. The albulario looked at me with pain in his eyes, and something else. Regret. "I didn't tell you everything," he gasped, "because I was afraid you wouldn't follow through." "What do you mean?" "The queen. She's not just a spirit. She's your blood." I froze. "What?" He nodded weakly. "Your mother, she wasn't just a healer. She was the last daughter of the spirit line. That makes you part of her legacy." My heart pounded. I stumbled back, overwhelmed by the truth. I was more than a vessel, more than a fighter. I was born from the curse itself. And maybe part of me carried the same darkness we were trying to destroy. Before I could say anything, the cave trembled again. A new figure appeared at the entrance. Not a shadow, not a spirit. A man, dressed in black robes, face covered in tribal tattoos, eyes pitch black like the void. "I've waited a long time to meet you," he said in a voice that chilled my bones. "Who are you?" I asked. He smiled. "Your uncle." My blood turned to ice. "You're lying." "Am I?" he said, stepping forward. "Your mother had a brother, a twin, banished by the spirit queen herself because he wanted power. She thought she'd kill me, but I survived, and I waited." The shadows circled around him like pets. He raised one hand, and the walls of the cave began to crack. "You were supposed to die as a baby," he continued, "but she saved you, hid you, trained you for this exact moment. But even she didn't know, the power inside you belongs to both light and darkness." "No," I whispered, stepping in front of Isay and the wounded albulario. "Yes," he said, "and when the final blood moon rises, you'll have to choose. Join me, or be destroyed by the very curse you carry." He raised his hand, and the spirit queen's prison began to shatter. I screamed, running forward, the dagger glowing, but I was too late. The stone broke apart, and a blast of white light filled the cave. We were all thrown back. When I opened my eyes, the queen stood in the center of the chamber, free at last. But she wasn't the same. Her hair floated like fire. Her eyes glowed too bright to look at, and her expression was not peace, it was rage. The shadows backed away, unsure. She turned toward me. "I loved your mother," she said in a voice that echoed through the stone. "But she made a mistake. She should have let you go. What are you saying? She sealed your dark side. But in doing so, she weakened the balance. Now that I'm free, the seal is breaking." No, this can't be happening," my uncle laughed. "You see now? The war isn't between us and her. It's within you." The queen lifted her hand, and the mucus shattered around my neck. I screamed as a wave of energy tore through me. My body burned from the inside. I fell on my knees, gasping, my skin glowing with strange markings I'd never seen before. Aisei rushed to me, grabbing my shoulders. "Fight it! Don't let them control you." But her voice sounded far away. My vision blurred, and then I saw everything. The past, the future, the world twisted by curses, a battlefield filled with fire and ash. A version of me standing alone, surrounded by both shadows and light, holding not a dagger, but a crown. The crown of the Aswang king. "No, Iwisparat. This isn't who I am." But even as I said it, part of me wondered if that was true. Was I chosen to save the world, or created to end it? The cave cracked further. The queen turned toward my uncle. "You broke the pact." He raised his hand. "You broke it first." And then they vanished in a flash of light, leaving only silence and dust. We were alone again. The albulario barely breathing. Aisei crying softly beside me. And I, broken, lost, unsure of who I really was. The final battle wasn't just coming. It had already begun inside me. Subscribe and stay close. The untold horrors are far from over. The sky had turned a deep blood red, casting a strange glow across the forest. A storm brewed above the ruins of the spirit temple, wind howling like the wails of the forgotten. Everything was quiet, too quiet. Even the birds had left. It was the kind of silence that only came before something terrible. I stood at the center of the old battlefield, where stone statues of warriors watched with broken faces. The mutia, now cracked but still pulsing with faint energy, hung heavy around my neck. My palms trembled as I stared into the distance where the veil between worlds had thinned, where he was waiting. The uncle I never knew, the enemy I didn't choose, and the blood I shared. Aisei stood beside me, holding my arm tightly. She had been my anchor in all this. Through fear, betrayal, and transformation, she stayed, loyal and true. Her face was bruised, her hands burnt from the earlier escape, but her eyes were steady. "Whatever happens," she whispered, "don't lose yourself." I nodded, but deep down, I wasn't sure who I was anymore. The albulario had not survived the last battle. His chants still echoed in my mind, reminding me of my lineage, my curse, my duty. His death made everything real. Final. There was no one left to guide me but the broken whispers of the past. A low hum vibrated the ground. The air grew heavy, and then, from the shadows of the ruined altar, he emerged. My uncle, wearing a cloak made of a swang skin, his eyes blacker than night, his smile dripping with malice. Around him slithered the creatures of darkness, the last army of the forgotten, twisted spirits, and ancient beasts reborn from the curse. "You came," he said, as if greeting an old friend. "I wasn't sure if you would survive the awakening." I raised the dagger, the one blessed by the Spirit Queen, though now dulled and chipped from overuse. "I didn't come to talk," I said, though my voice cracked. He stepped forward, unafraid. "You still don't understand, do you?" he said. This war isn't about power. It's about truth. Our family was never cursed. We were chosen. The spirits feared our blood. They sealed our power because they knew what we could become. He pointed at me, the air pulsing with each word. You felt it. The anger, the hunger, the fire inside you. That's not darkness. That's who we really are. No, I said. That's who you became. I don't have to be like you. He laughed. Then you will die, just like your mother, just like all those who try to stop me. My chest tightened. He knew. He had killed her. Rage surged through me, sharp and blinding. The ground split as the power inside me answered the call. Not from Mutia, but from my blood. And just like that, the battle began. He launched the first wave, twisted spirits flying toward us like spears. I jumped forward, slicing with the dagger, the blade pulsing with weakened light. Isay set fire to the ground behind me, creating a barrier with oil and old prayers. We fought like it was the end of the world. His power was overwhelming. Every strike he landed shook my bones. Every scream from his monsters chipped away at my will. But I held on, because I knew this wasn't just about strength, it was about choice. I saw flashes of my mother in the wind, her hands glowing with healing, her eyes filled with sorrow. I remembered her voice telling me stories at night about forgotten heroes, never once revealing she had been one of them. You don't have to be a monster, I told myself with every blow. And yet, with every second, the temptation grew. My uncle laughed, throwing me to the ground, his hands burning with dark energy. He stepped over me, the dagger kicked away, my body too weak to move. You're not a hero, he said. You're just a scared child who inherited something he was never meant to carry. I looked up at him, my vision blurred by blood and tears. You're right, I whispered. I didn't choose this, but I'm choosing now. From the dirt, I reached into my chest pocket and pulled out the shard of the Mutia, now cracked in 3 places. With my final strength, I pushed into the soil beneath me and whispered the words the albulario had taught me in secret. Katawaning lupa, dugo ing lahi, isenjit amo on liwanag esse delim. The earth answered. Light burst from beneath the ruins, flooding the ground in a spiral of ancient power. It wasn't my strength. It was ours, the legacy of my mother, the hope of the spirits, and the courage I'd found through loss. My uncle screamed, his body burning as the light engulfed him. No, you don't understand. If you destroy me, you destroy the truth. I looked him in the eyes. Then let it be reborn. The light swallowed him whole. And then silence. The creatures vanished. The storm faded. The earth stopped shaking. Isay ran to me, tears in her eyes. You did it, she whispered, holding my face. But I didn't answer. Something was still wrong. I stood slowly, my body numb. The sky had cleared. The ruins were glowing with peace for the first time in years. But in my chest, something still pulsed, something heavy. I looked down at the shard in my hand. It was no longer glowing, but it wasn't dead either. The Spirit Queen's voice echoed faintly in my mind. A seed does not die when buried, it waits. And then I understood. The curse wasn't gone. It had simply changed form. My uncle was gone, but his spirit had been sealed within the broken Mutia, now buried beneath the ruins. And I was its new guardian. I turned to Isay. I didn't destroy him, I said quietly. I became the prison. She stared at me, shocked. But that means I can never leave this place, I said. Not completely. As long as I live, the curse stays buried. But if I fall, he'll rise again. She shook her head. No, we'll find another way. We'll break the cycle. I smile, weak but sure. Maybe. But for now, this is enough. The final choice wasn't about power. It was about sacrifice. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid to carry it. But as the winds grew still and we began walking back toward the forest, I felt something behind me, just a flicker of movement. I turned. At the edge of the ruins, where the soil still glowed faintly, a small figure stood. A child, dark-eyed, pale-skinned, smiling, and in his hand was a single, unbroken piece of the mutia. I froze. I turned back too, following my gaze. "What is it?" she asked. I didn't answer, because deep down, I knew the war wasn't over. It had just found a new vessel. The child stood there like a ghost, unmoving. His face was too calm, too still. His small fingers wrapped around the unbroken shard of the mutia, glowing faintly like a dying ember. I couldn't move. My feet were heavy, my heart heavier. Isay's voice was distant, as though muffled by the air itself. The world had gone quiet again, like it was holding its breath. The boy tilted his head, eyes still locked with mine. And then, in a voice too ancient for someone so young, he whispered a single word I will never forget. "Soon." Then he vanished, just like smoke in the wind. Isay rushed to my side, clutching my hand. She had seen him too. I wasn't hallucinating. It was real, but I couldn't chase him. Not now. My strength was gone. My wounds burned. My soul felt like it had been stretched thin, barely holding together. I had already faced death, faced truth, faced blood, and now I had to face silence. We returned to the village 3 days later. The forest had changed. The once cursed lands around the ruins had become calm. The air felt lighter. The birds had returned. People in the nearby villages whispered about strange dreams ending, about waking without fear for the first time in years. But no one knew what had happened. Not really. We didn't tell them. Not yet. The elders welcomed us back, especially Isay. She had been one of their own, after all. Brave, smart, loyal. They gave her a home near the old bolete tree where the spirits were said to watch. As for me, they kept their distance. Not out of fear, but out of uncertainty. They didn't know what I had become. Truthfully, neither did I. Every night, I felt it like a quiet knock inside my chest. The piece of the curse still buried deep in me. Silent, waiting, not evil anymore, but not entirely gone either. Like a shadow that would never leave. I didn't leave the village, didn't return to the old city. I chose a quiet life, helping farmers, repairing roofs, clearing paths in the forest. Simple things, honest work. It helped keep my mind steady, helped remind me that even with power, I could still be human. Isay visited often. Sometimes we talked. Sometimes we just sat together, not needing words. Our bond had changed. It wasn't about fear anymore. It was about survival, about understanding each other in a way no one else could. One day, weeks after we returned, she brought me an old wooden box wrapped in banana leaves. It was from the albulario's hut, recovered by the elders after the forest cleared. Inside was his journal, pages full of symbols, stories, warnings, and one final letter. If you're reading this, it means you've lived. That alone is a miracle. But surviving is not the end. It's the beginning. The curse was never just in blood. It was in memory, in silence, in forgetting what came before. Your role now is not to fight. It is to remember, to guard, and to teach. That is how we break the chain. Not with swords, but with truth. I read it again and again until I had memorized every word. The truth. That was all I had left. One evening, a group of children gathered by the river, asking about the old ruins in the hills. I sat with them, nervous at first. But then I remembered the stories my mother used to tell me, and I began. Not everything, but enough. I told them about a boy who was lost, a friend who believed, a curse that tried to destroy, and a choice that changed everything. They listened, wide-eyed, asking questions, laughing when I added strange voices or funny details. And when the story ended, one girl raised her hand and asked, "Is it true?" I looked up at the stars, and I said, "Yes, every part of it." That night, for the first time, I felt peace. But peace doesn't mean the absence of danger. Because 2 months later, I had the dream. The child again, standing in a field of ash. The shard in his hand, now pulsing brighter, almost alive. He didn't speak this time. He simply smiled and pointed behind me. When I turned in the dream, I saw something I hadn't expected. Another figure. Older. Familiar. My mother. She looked just like I remembered, but with eyes that had seen too much. She didn't speak either, just nodded, and I understood. There would be others. Other curses. Other threats. The darkness wasn't gone. It was just sleeping. But now I wasn't alone. When I woke, the first light of morning touched the hills. I stood at the edge of the village, breathing in the wind, the trees, the earth. Aise walked up behind me, holding warm salabat. "Another dream?" she asked. I nodded. She didn't need to ask what it meant. She already knew. "So, what now?" she asked softly. I looked at her, then at the sky, and I smiled. "Now we live." She smiled back, and for the first time since all this began, we both laughed. Just a small laugh, but real. Pure. Because we had survived. Because we had changed. And because even if the shadows returned, we knew who we were now. Not cursed, not forgotten, but chosen. Chosen to protect, to remember, to love, and to never let the silence win again. Final reflection. Sometimes the monsters we fight live inside us, born from pain, fear, and silence. But sometimes what we carry isn't a curse, it's a lesson. A reminder that the light doesn't always win by force. Sometimes it wins simply by refusing to give up. And that is enough.